Ok, allora, di nuovo grazie amici.
Okay, so thank you again, friends. We are opening officially the event in Cagliari, and it will be the only one for this year in Sardinia. I am here today to talk about this topic because these beings want me to talk about it, because we are risking so much. We are risking so much, and even politicians are not informed about what an atomic war really is, which is not only about explosions, deaths, radiation. It is much worse, and therefore, I am going to show you things that I am sure you do not know, at least most of you. I'll start with the usual things.
Questo è il mio sito.
This is my website, where you'll find lots of articles, information, etc., etc. Very important. And, as in all things, as it has been my story, that is not to believe, but to verify, to see and feel, because you have to experience the truth by yourself. I very often make this comparison. I can explain. Yesterday I was at a friend's place, a new friend. His name is Nicola. He offered me a very good cocktail, and while we were talking I said, "You see, your chef could have explained to me even with a book how good this cocktail is, but until I taste it, I don't know the truth of this cocktail, of this flavor." So, the truth is something we have to taste, because when we have tasted it, no one cheats us. Nobody can fool us anymore. So, how can I be fooled by an alleged scientist who tells me UFOs don't exist? If I have seen them, you are a liar. You are corrupt. So, in life, this concept of experiencing things firsthand and not believe in anybody, listening, but then verifying. Because, with the fact that we listen, they often fucked us up, starting with politicians and many other people.
Quindi,
So we verify everything, and we have to do our homework,
perché la visita extraterrestre
because the extraterrestrial visit, the main task that these beings set themselves, is not for us to believe that they exist or to contact us.
principale che loro hanno
The main task that they have in the mission, in our world, is to make us responsible, because our world is a mess. It's an open-air hell. And I will show you things that will scare you of the reality of this planet. While we are doing our housework, taking our children to school, planning our future, planet Earth is dying, and us along with it. So, the extraterrestrials' purpose is this. No real revolution is possible if there is no new vision of life. Therefore, politicians will not be able to give us a new society because they are the old man. We are the old human being. We need new ideas, new consciousness, new knowledge. Otherwise, we will not be able to plan for ourselves, for our children, for our affections, a future that can somehow escape from the terrible disaster that the powerful people are preparing for humanity. Therefore, the teaching of more than 70 years of communication at all levels by these beings is very important. There is no point in believing or not believing in UFOs. It's useless. If an extraterrestrial comes here and picks me up on a flying saucer, takes me around the solar system, brings me back here, I am an idiot who took a ride in a flying saucer. I haven't changed. I just took a ride in a flying saucer. If I get in a car with Albert Einstein, I don't become a physicist, a genius. I'm just an ignorant who took a ride in a car with Albert Einstein.
quindi noi dobbiamo studiare.
So we must study. If we don't study and experience by ourselves, we won't be able to change, and we can always get fucked.
Per essere fregati. Quindi
So, I make available free of charge. To who wish to begin this path of knowledge, you will find it in the Free Resources section, about 20 books, in electronic format, which are a starter kit, but an essential base to begin to understand what kind of new information these beings bring us. Here, a very nice scientific information is that we are immortal. we change our bodies. We have been fooled, for example, by putting reincarnation in the scope of religious beliefs. But if we are a spirit inside a body, this is a scientific fact. It's not a question of religion. It's not about believing. Now I am inside this body. Therefore, there will be energetic bonds, as to say, that link me and make me able to manage this body. So, my body, our body, is alive because we are inside it. The body dies when we leave by law of nature. When the timer expires, we leave the body, which is better, cause if it's old, sick, it's better to change body. Now, the good news is that there is scientific evidence of these things, even human evidence, but they keep it hidden from us, because human society is governed by fear. The one who is afraid is easily manipulated. One who instead knows, as a scientific fact, that he is eternal, well, it is a little more difficult to make him accept certain things. So, 20 books in electronic PDF format that you can download. For those who don't like the electronic format, we printed them in hard copies. You may write to the email cosmicshop. What was it? Point it? Ah, they wrote it here, cosmicshop.it, if you want to buy them on a second time. Then there's my YouTube channel, overflowing with material. Subscribe it, because there you could really see lots and lots and lots of evidence. There is the collection of all my conferences of the last, I suppose, 78 years. There is the web channel, Giorgio Bongiovanni's website, where he posts the messages he receives from these beings. Giorgio Bongiovanni, contactist and stigmatist. There is also his YouTube channel, full of important information. Then, for those who want to stay informed about the events I am doing around Italy and the world, there is the events section. I also have a newsletter where, more or less once a week, because I'm not a serial spammer, and scrolling down the site, the home page, you can subscribe to the newsletter. Then I have Instagram, I am also multimedia, I have Telegram, and so you have many, shall we say, sources to stay informed. The next scheduled event is in Bologna on 27th of August, and it is entitled Universal Geometries and the New Era, Future Heavens for a Renewed Humanity, because the prophet speaks of a new sky and a new earth. It is not a way of saying the sky will truly change. There will be a different sky, and there are great changes taking place in this time in the solar system and, of course, on planet Earth, which will be what the eyes of the new humanity will see, unfortunately, after the terrible things that are happening and will happen. I hold classes, seminars, or workshops for those who like English, more varied topics. For example, this one is The Last War of the Antichrist, the Present and the Future, according to the Science of the Spirit, where I analyze the current clash between Ukraine, which is in fact the NATO armed wing, and Russia, because this is story in the prophetic corpus. So I explain the deep spiritual prophetic reasons to well understand what is happening, and that the whole thing, in reality, is much more than just a fact of geopolitical power. Another title, another theme, Fractals and the Thought of God, the Secrets of Revealed Creation. Because God, as a creating entity, creates everything through maths from the micro to the macro. Everything obeys to strict mathematical and geometric proportions that are golden ratio, Fibonacci progression, and so on. That's also, we could say, the leading theme, because I will not only talk about what is happening in the solar system, but I will also talk about how these changes obey these forces that are governed by these mathematical proportions. So, chance doesn't exist, su casu exists, but we buy it from the pastor. Mysteries. Thank you. Thank friends. Mysteries of history. The Immortal Prince. The mysteries of the Musine. In short, there's something for everyone. Ufology, of course. UFOs. Lying at all costs. Where I explain all the secret and public American programs that were actually intended to manipulate this extraordinary reality. A bit of esotericism. I did an analysis of that terrible ritual that was done by the Italian government when the little dragon Mario was there. They made a sacrificial rite of the Italian people, and I explain it well in this seminar. I have some news. I opened an online page on my site a few days ago. So you go to the home page of my site. You see, the home page, you scroll down, and you find this section, where you open a page and, which is this one, and, scrolling down, there are some titles. They are not all there. We are a work in progress, but you can already find a number of them. If there is something that you like, that you know and you don't find it here, write to the email I told you before, which was events@piergiorgiocaria.it, and you can get the information. The Fatima Prophecy and Nuclear War. From the third secret of Fatima, given by the Holy Mother to the three shepherd children on 13th October 1917. A great war will be unleashed in the second half of the 20th century. Fire and smoke will fall from the sky. The waters of the oceans will become steam and foam will rise, upsetting and sinking everything. Millions and millions of men will perish from hour to hour. Those who remain alive will envy the dead. In all the way you'll look, there will be anguish, misery, and ruin in all countries. Now, this prophecy, let us say, has been fulfilled just in part, because it has already happened that the oceans become vapors. They have become vapors. The extraterrestrials said so. You see, this is a message from one of these booklets. We, Mr. Ashtar Sharon speaks, which is a title. It's not a name. It means holy leader. He is the commander of these interstellar fleets. We are seriously concerned about your atomic energy abuse. Nuclear tests damage the cosmos. Your political leaders do not estimate life, and since life comes from God, they have no respect for God at all. There are states on Earth that say they are not on war, but our opinion is that they are carrying out a terrible war against all humanity because they keep exploding atomic bombs. You absolutely cannot imagine the damage you have already caused in the cosmos. You do not care if millions of deformed children are born, and you carelessly ruin all the fauna and flora on this Earth. So, these are some examples of the terrible mutations caused by atomic explosions, but in fact, real nuclear war, as the classic terms, has not yet started. I put the question recently, at the beginning of July, to Giorgio Bongiovanni, and let's see his answer. Here, Our Lady, of course, is prophesying an atomic holocaust, Giorgio. A nuclear war that would be, she says, unleashed in the second half of the 20th century. Now, I'm dressing up as the devil's advocate. Questions have been asked to me. We're in the 21st century and still the atomic war hasn't happened. What can you tell us about that, Giorgio?
Well, the fact that there was none is eloquent proof that the mother foretells chastisements in order to avoid chastisements.
Of course.
She doesn't announce them cynically and enjoys the fact that at that time there will be the end of humanity, and she will be enjoying of this. She, weeping with blood tears, announces, precedes, a prediction that says,
la quale dice se non ci sarà
if there is absolutely nothing
che possa far
that can make your human generation change,
umana, accadrà.
this will happen.
Ora, nella seconda metà del secolo XX,
Now, in the second half of the 20th century until today, a sui generis humanity has continued to do what it did in evil. In fact, it has got worse.
però c'è stato un disegno che riguarda
However, there has been a plan concerning love of which I want to speak to you tonight. Incomprehensible, insane, but absolute.
l'amore più grande di
The greatest love of all loves that has made some things happen from the second half of the 20th century until today.
E queste alcune cose, se non conosci, se non
And these certain things,
del grande pubblico,
unknown to the general public,
del grande pubblico, cioè come
not like Lionel Messi or Maradona or Pink Floyd or Robert De Niro, are known.
quello che sto per dirvi è conosciuto da pochi, ma
What I am about to tell you is known to few, but they are enough to be able to stop God's chastisement.
E allora si sono avvicendati sulla terra proprio
And so they have come upon the earth, right from those years in which Our Lady predicted the Third World War.
la terza guerra mondiale. Si sono incarnati,
A number of souls have incarnated,
sulla terra,
appeared on earth,
che hanno cambiato
and have literally changed generations,
generazioni. Quindi facendo nascere
giving birth in the new generations
una percentuale
to a percentage of
di
people,
persone, uomini e donne,
men and women,
non hanno la
who do not have the genetics that our fathers brought
padri e
and who, until nowadays, have prevailed over the new genetics.
nuova. Mi spiego.
Let me explain. John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi were born, and then afterwards Giovanni Falcone, Paolo Borsellino, General Dalla Chiesa. Even if we do not agree to their violent deeds, Che Guevara, and other great philosophers and spiritual masters. In our little one, but I really tell you, in my little one, just when the Heavenly Mother was weeping tears, she was concerned that she might indeed, she announced it, a poor wretched servant was born in Syracuse, and she announced this birth, weeping real tears of joy. Mr. Eugenio Siragusa was born on Mount Etna. That is to say, he was born, he put his work in place just when the nuclear missiles were to go off. In 1963, I was even foretold, in my mad visions, that a new generation would be born. So why did it not happen in the second half of the 20th century what Our Lady had prophesied? What God Himself had announced through Our Lady. Because there was the intercession of this infinite love, the Holy Spirit, who asked and obtained from the Father that some of His children would be incarnated on earth as an attempt to request, an attempt to announce a new redemption. I feel myself to be one of these. In fact, in a message Eugenio Siragusa wrote in 1993, when it was already past the second half of the 20th century, Pier,
Yes, yes.
he writes, Giorgio Bongiovanni bears the signs of Christ, a new offering of redemption at the willing of the Holy Mother. So the Holy Mother, on one hand, announces God's will, and on the other, interposes herself as an intermediary at all costs to avoid the destruction of the world.
Per evitare la distruzione del mondo.
But the Holy Mother knows that if what she is asking today, on 3rd July, 2nd July, 2023, it may be, but I do not know, because I am not God, that next time the Father may say, No, Holy Mother, now the righteousness of your Son Christ must come. So the times, you can answer the devil's advocates, the times have been prolonged, and we have to thank her and God, but especially her, for this prolongation.
So there was a divine intervention, because nuclear war had to break out when there was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Our Lady asked the little shepherds to reveal the message of Fatima, which contains the prophecy of the Third Atomic World War in 1960, because in 1917 didn't exist weapons that could destroy the whole of humanity in a few minutes, that is, nuclear weapons. So, she wanted it to be revealed at that time, because mankind was ready to understand the problem, because at that time there was the good Pope, Pope John XXIII, because at that time there was John Kennedy. So, when war broke out, when the Cuban Missile Crisis broke out in October 1962, we were literally one step away from a nuclear holocaust. There was terrible fear across the planet, and Pope John was one of the mediators who intervened with the leader of the United States, Kennedy, and the leader of the Soviet Union, who was, slip of the tongue, Khrushchev. And miraculously, at the last moment, the nuclear holocaust was avoided. But there are occult facts that mankind does not know. Because not only was Eugenio Siragusa alive at the time, but also George Adamski, who organized a contact meeting between John Fitzgerald Kennedy and extraterrestrials. Because Kennedy, the Kennedy family, was one of the many American mafia families who had grown rich through illicit trafficking. Kennedy had been elected with the mafia votes. So, he was from the other side, then suddenly he turns his head and makes an absurd speech. Let's free the world from war and hunger. You say, but how? And he began to do a work that cost him his life against evil. So these forces intervened and, through Our Lady's intercession, changed history. Because there was a wave of contacts, of sightings and direct intervention by extraterrestrials, even in the nuclear sphere. We will speak about it now. Because Our Lady obtained an extension of God's justice. Because humanity and the whole universe are governed by a law that is above us, which is the law of cause and effect. You reap what you sow. Therefore, because of what mankind had sown at that time, there should have been the destruction of mankind, but it not happened. Obviously, it is not easy for a neophyte to understand these things, mixing UFOs, Madonnas, prophecies, and so on and so forth. But the truth is this: either God does not exist, or He exists. We have to make a discriminating statement and say, I must solve the problem. Because if God exists, Sooner or later he will give us signs, and God exists so much he exists that history has changed continuously.
Cambia in continuazione. Giovanna
Joan of Arc, Padre Pio,
Pio,
Saint Francis, who sent them? Who sent these great saints? They come from a divine world, but the divine world is not a world of belief. It is a real world. It is a world that exists. I took part a few years ago in a meeting. There were Dr. Citro, then there was Sarah Cunial. There were various illustrious people. I spoke as last, and I said, "Beautiful speeches that you have made, and you are all extraordinary doctors. But there is a fact, that is, the analysis of the spiritual world that you make is wrong, because a stigmatized person who has wounds is not a religious fact. It is a scientific fact. There is a force, a science, which allows a cell to remain in a permanently unbalanced state, because no wound can remain so for 30 years or more. Either it heals or it goes gangrenous. There is no other way. Now this man who I have known since before he had the stigmata, Bon Giovanni, he really has the stigmata to this day, hands, feet, and side, and his wounds do not get infected. They do not heal. They remain like that. So that is a very powerful science. It is not a religious belief. So when we talk about God, God is science, because creation comes from him and does not come with a Sylvan-type act of magic. It comes from something that has a scientific basis, because science comes from him. We are just trying to discover it.
Quindi, ecco,
So,
questi concetti sono
here, these concepts are an aspect of that transformation of our mentality that will allow us to improve our lives in unimaginable ways. Because these forces have gigantic power, and to use them, you don't have to ask anyone's permission. You just have to follow the rules and apply them. They work automatically. My life, from the little Baratilan railwayman who worked in Macamer, has turned on itself 5 times. I mean, it was impossible to think that someone with such humble beginnings would experience all that I have experienced and am experiencing to this day. Higher forces, even divine forces, intervened, because obviously, hanging out with a stigmatized person for so many years, I was also involved in those aspects that he lives as a stigmatized person, which are also aspects linked to the divine world. And there is a part of the third secret of Fatima that even the diplomatic version does not contain, because Cardinal Ottaviani, who divulged it, because Pope John decided not to divulge it, he had doubts. However, when he saw the crisis in Cuba, he said, "But isn't it that what the message of Fatima says is about to burst?" Because the message of Fatima was read to him by Monsignor Loris Capovilla, who died a few years ago, very old, who spoke Portuguese and read the message to him and translated it for him. So Pope John knew it, and therefore intervened in the Cuban Missile Crisis, but Ottaviani, who was the prefect of the Holy Office, the position that Cardinal Ratzinger would later hold before becoming Pope Benedict, he believed in it and decided and obtained the Pope's consent to divulge it, and in fact, it came out in the German newspaper Neues Europa. Even then, in 78, it was also published by the official media of the Holy See, which is L'Osservatore Romano. And in the third secret of Fatima, however, there is a missing part that Our Lady revealed to Bon Giovanni, because Giorgio was stigmatized in Fatima, in the same place in 1917, by the Holy Mother. So, let's say he is a son, Giorgio, of Fatima, where this terrible secret was given. And Our Lady prophesies precisely the coming of angels. Angels yesterday, extraterrestrials today. And at that time, the second half of the 20th century, cosmic beings will come from distant shores of the universe in the name of God. So they bring a message of peace, of love, but also of justice. And they are those legions of which Christ speaks to Peter. When Peter cut off the ear of Malchus in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says to him, "Don't you know that I could ask my Father, and he would at once send me more than 12 armies of angels?" Are these beings he refers to? Christ uses the term legion, which is a Roman term, therefore, of the invader of Palestine, of Judea, because he wanted to say, "I am also a military leader, that is, I command an army," which are these beings. Now, these speeches that I have been doing for over 30 years, for decades, for most of the public, they were freaky stuff. But the prophecy of Christ says, "There is nothing hidden that will not be revealed, not secret that will not be known." The Pentagon mysteriously, as of 2017, after decades of denial, of taking the piss, and you're crazy, and it's just globular lightning, and it's just lightning in the sky, or rubbish, swamp gas even, had been said. Suddenly, the Pentagon comes out with a news story that is published with great fanfare by the New York Times. On 18th of December 2017, the Pentagon, through what is actually its civilian press organ, reveals that there was a program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, studying UFOs. Not only do they publish this, but they disclose 3 videos taken in infrared from the cameras of U.S. Navy fighter planes. Until that moment, military personnel who talked about their experiences with UFOs were heavily sanctioned and fined. Instead, after this revelation, the Pentagon authorized the witnesses to speak. Then, here is Lieutenant Ryan Graves speaking, Captain David Fravor speaking, and others who were the authors of these very films. So, a momentous turning point that kicks off a process that concludes, in inverted commas, it concludes, on Monday 27th of December 2021, so about 2 years ago, where President Biden signs a federal law, funded by the American state, regulating UFO and extraterrestrial research. I had it all translated. It says everything: how to recover the bodies, how to preserve them, how to study the recovered spaceships, and so on. That is, everything that we, researchers, were trying to tell the public suddenly becomes law. So, it's a 180-degree paradigm shift. Not only that, the law imposes that UAPs also should be studied by military and civilian specialists, and that these results must be made public to Congress and the Americans, and thus, consequently, to the whole planet Earth. And the process was initiated by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Senator Marco Rubio, and Congressman Ruben Gallego, who achieved the historic result. Now, these 3 politicians are no ordinary people. They all come from military and intelligence circles. So, something mysterious moved within the military-industrial complex system that caused this story to regurgitate after being hidden for decades. The first hearing took place on 17th of May 2022. It was practically at the House Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Counter-Espionage and Counter-Proliferation. And on this situation, even more documents produced by the military were presented. So suddenly, the unthinkable happens. For us researchers, the world's leading body, which had always deposed, denied, concealed, even killed to keep the truth from coming out, suddenly says, this is another very important document that confirms what we already knew, that extraterrestrials control all war zones that can generate nuclear escalation. This is the picture. It's a frame that has been published on 24 of January 2023 by Jeremy Corbell, who is a kind of, let's say, blockhead that the Pentagon uses. He's a public figure, he's a researcher, a documentary filmmaker, that the Pentagon uses to break news when he doesn't want to be the one to do it himself, because they may be documents of a certain military importance. And published by Corbell in his X account is a frame of a film taken by an American spy plane, the MC-12W ISR, just a spy plane, filming a flying sphere that is a typical extraterrestrial detection probe. I've seen a lot of them around the world, flying over the Iraqi city of Mosul. So, in the theater of war. Official documents. So it's no more stuff published by Pier Giorgio or some other researcher. The official American military media provides Corbell. Then, they also gave him other material that he disclosed. I am making a very brief summary. So, stuff of military origin.
Materiale di origine militare. Poche settimane fa, questo
A few weeks ago, this gentleman, who was also part of these commissions formed under the law signed by Biden, even came out, whistleblower. We are not alone.
non siamo soli.
UFO. U.S. has alien vehicles. Revelations from ex-intelligence officer. Even a former secret agent. So, everything that for mankind was nonsense and mindlessness, things is finally coming to light. There are important people, such as this man by the name of David Grush, who reveal these would be intact aircraft entirely and partially created by a non-human intelligence, and their study would be part of a secret program. Other officials confirm the information, but the Pentagon clarifies, we have no verification. And we are back to talking about Mussolini's UFO, because in reality, the first spaceship was actually recovered in 1933 in Italy, in Lombardy. It was kept for a time in the airport of Vergiate, near Varese, and then, when the Allies arrived, they took everything away. The Americans, who already had spaceships recovered from 1941. Today's news, 23rd of July, 2023. Do UFOs exist? The U.S. Congress is pressing to clarity. The government and the armed forces must provide the available information on UFOs. This is the demand of many U.S. congressional representatives ahead of a new House hearing scheduled for this Wednesday, during which two former pilots who have claimed to have seen UFOs several times, I will add, during Navy military exercises, will be heard, and they are, I have already named them, Ryan Graves, Lieutenant, and David Fravor, Captain, respectively, but also ex-intelligence agent David Grush, that's the one from earlier, according to whom the U.S. are in possession of alien spaceships. The hearing will be different from the others, ensures Republican Congressman Tim Burchett, I don't know if he's, or Barset, I don't know if that's how to pronounce it, one of the most fervent supporter of the need to make UFO information available. So, the unthinkable is happening. Now, what is the problem? Civil society is inconclusive. I mean, this news, I don't know, maybe it has a specific weight. They fly too high, they fly too low, or they use their head like a roundabout. They go around it. But gigantic scale things are happening. That is, the highest American military authorities are admitting that we are being visited by super-evolved mankind from other worlds, humanities that have a science that is unthinkable for us. These people live 1,000, 1,200 years. They do not grow old. I mean, they do amazing things, and they would like to help us. But because their laws violate, they don't violate free will. They are desperately trying to generate, through little people like me, or even through infiltrators in military institutions, a minimum base of human beings who could allow contact or otherwise the continuation of Earth's human history. Thus, Pandora's box has been opened. Civil society is not yet conscious of it, but it is a process that proves to us that everything I keep telling you is true. It is based today on direct Pentagon sources. Scientists, I have spoken. I have met scientists in person who have worked aboard recovered flying saucers, and they have told me a lot of things, some of which I already knew, but some of which I did not. And I am talking about years ago. Isaiah 13, verse 5. They come from faraway lands, from the ends of the heavens, the Lord and the weapons of his wrath. In the early 50s, the phenomenon of contactism, that is, the encounter between extraterrestrials and human beings, began to become famous all over the world, because these beings chose people with particular characteristics, even willing to sacrifice themselves, in order to inoculate human society with new knowledge, new information that would enable us to break out of the self-destructive impasse that is causing us to collapse at all levels. In almost all messages, major or minor, the extraterrestrials always put the danger of the atomic bomb at the forefront. Not only the military one, also the civil one, which pollutes and cannot be dismissed, and the secret of secrets, which has only been revealed by a few Italian scientists, one of whom is Emilio del Giudice, in reality is that power stations, if considered in their entirety, including decommissioning, produce electricity at a frightening cost. But they are part of the supply chain for creating atomic bombs. So they dump the cost of nuclear weapons, part of the cost, on civil society, these evil geniuses. Read the book, The Secret of the Three Bullets, where, among other things, it is explained that depleted uranium weapons are, in fact, tactical nukes, because they are not depleted at all. The uranium becomes depleted after the explosions. And the thing, let's say, terrible is that, to make these weapons, they use cold fusion, which could give free energy to the whole planet without polluting at almost zero cost. I met various people who are in this field. We also had journalistic collaborations with one of the scientists who carried out the experiment, whose name was Giuliano Preparata, who was called to Israel and after 2 months died, probably poisoned with polonium. Because the energy mafia and the military mafia do not want free energy to be given to the people. And therefore, they use this technology to make weapons, atomic tactics called depleted uranium weapons. And therefore, in these messages, the extraterrestrials always emphasize the risk of nuclear power. Get rid of nuclear power as soon as you can, because it will leave you with a dreadful legacy. And that is the theme that I want to come to after all this talk. And from the earliest days of world ufology, which was born on 24 June 1947 with the sighting of civilian pilot Kenneth Arnold, who was taking part in a search for a missing plane. And he saw a fleet of flying saucers, 9 of them, above the Mount Rainier in Washington state. From there, let's say, modern ufology officially begins. And therefore, you can understand immediately, especially the soldiers, that these beings were very interested in civil and military nuclear power. And they explain this to all their contacted persons. Curiously, Eugenio has his first physical encounter with 2 extraterrestrials on the slopes of an extinct crater of the volcano Etna, which is hollow. I went there several times. Now there is a forest, so you can no longer see it, but when I went there, in the 1990s, early 1990s, it was still empty, and the beings parked their flying saucer inside the extinct crater. Then they came down this footpath, and as Eugene came up, they went to meet him, and the physical contact is in the month of April '62, so a few months before the Cuban crisis broke out. And Eugenio, in this first meeting, precisely received a message, which I read to you in part, about the danger of nuclear power. Scientists, government men, are despite, we have to warn you again necessarily, that if you continue to implement the crazy designs you have set yourselves with nuclear experiments, nothing can be done to prevent this world of yours from suffering a heavy blow of a disastrous and deadly nature. Rest assured that if you find the strength and courage to establish a firm union among all the peoples of the earth and to carry out the complete destruction of all the destructive weapons that still today, more than ever, make you proudly evil and morbidly aggressive, we shall feel authorized, through the love that has bound us to you since the origins of this solar system, to approach you without reserve to grant you that knowledge and that better science that would bring about for all humanity a serene life, full of happiness, true freedom, and infinite prosperity. This message that we have dictated with great love, but with equal concern, is one of the most heartfelt invitations considering the gravity of the acts that you propose to carry out. Today we can understand this because in November, the crisis in Cuba broke out, and they were monitoring, that is, the extraterrestrials already knew that the Soviets were installing nuclear weapons in Cuba close to its borders. This is what NATO is doing today with Russia. Exactly the same scenario, only it has been turned upside down. And anyway, the crisis broke out because the Americans had already installed atomic weapons close to the borders of the Soviet Union because they had put them in Turkey. So the Soviets say, "We'll give you a taste of your own medicine." So they warn through Eugenio, and between the lines make it clear to the scientists and government men that they knew that they monitored the situation. We have done much, and will continue to do what we can to stem the worst. In case you, the rulers, and men of science choose the worst, we would be left with no other option than that of bringing out of the irretrievable disaster only those who have known and understood us, and who have loved their neighbor as we have. So, there's an intervention program, but there is also a salvation program for a number of human beings who have committed themselves, over the years, to defending life. That is, who have not only minded their own business, but who have participated in the social life of their nation, and therefore of the entire planet, to try to do something to stop or slow down this terrible self-destructive drift. Another very important message, also received from Eugenio. The nuclear experiments have alarmed the inhabitants of the other planets. These are the main causes that have driven them. As they have done in the distant past, they have been visiting us for millennia, to visit the Earth with greater observational activity. They are here with us because they know better than we do what could happen at any moment. October 62, the message, it could happen at any moment. And, while they are ready to take action with all the measures at their disposal to prevent the irreparable, they are keeping a watchful eye on the geoid, the planet, and especially its magnetic axis, which, with the nuclear test chains carried out during this time, has been shaken with such intensity that its already precarious, unstable situation is in serious danger. First of all, we must stop further nuclear experiments, which are as damaging to property and humanity as they are lethal to the balancing unfolding of the magnetic masses of our own and other planets in the solar system. Thus, atomic explosions disrupt the entire solar system, not just our planet. Secondly, we need the peaceful union of all mankind to protect its survival and to provoke the ideal conditions for an exchange of scientific knowledge with inhabitants of other worlds, of our own and other solar systems that are more advanced in all fields. So, again, the deal. He says, "If you give up being crazy, warmongers, we will contact you and help you. We give you a hand. And their hand, I assure you, do unimaginable things for the good." We say that a great event stands at the doorstep of our time, and, like all great events in human history, even it suffers from the rejecting pressure of the non-believer, of the Superman. Here he means by Superman, the ignorant fool who thinks he knows everything, and of those who do not want to know, because they do not see and do not touch. There is a contactist almost unknown, who, even before Eugenio, his name was Eugene Drake, an American, who already in the 1950s, from the early 1950s, so still Eugenio had not started his mission, was divulging these nuclear talks. This is his paper, that Drake published in a self-published booklet that is crazy in how far it anticipated everything that is coming to light today. The fact that we on Earth have detonated atomic bombs and plan to use hydrogen or cobalt bombs in war is one reason why these space visitors have come into our density. Every part of the Earth's surface, where destructive war activity is concentrated, has been examined. All airspaces and nuclear bases have been traced. All laboratories too. All areas where uranium and other minerals are mined for manufacturing of atomic or hydrogen bombs are listed. All world leaders are under their surveillance. All so-called secret meetings, plans, operations, projects are known to these space beings. Invisible observers are amid all meetings noting, recording, and photographing everything that takes place that has destruction in mind. Since the mission of these spacecrafts is useful and peaceful, no damage is intended to any terrestrial unless a hostile move is made against them. Once I argued with a former American secret agent because some gray aliens with some kind of laser weapon had sliced up a military patrol. No, because they are bad guys, because who tells us, but what did you do? Hey, we were attacking them. Then what do you want? Let me understand. They defended themselves because self-defense is authorized. I met in person, a few years ago, former Captain Robert Salas, who was first-hand involved in a case of a flying saucer that disabled an American atomic power plant in 1967 in the state of Montana, the Malmstrom base. Salas took an oath of silence, which was demanded of him by his superiors. But in the end, he didn't care and said, "This story is too important. I have to talk about it." He was also called to the Congress recently to testify about his experience. And thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, in 2005, together with the writer James Klotz, he published this book containing all the desecrated military documents proving that Malmstrom's case is true, that indeed the UFOs really deactivated the atomic warheads that were on this base. This is a picture of the interview. And this is a small extract where Robert tells us what he experienced. Robert, in the year 1967, in the month of March, something strange happened at the Malmstrom base in Montana, where there were nuclear missiles. Can you tell us what you experienced?
Yes, of course. On March 24th, 1967, I was a missile launch officer, so I had control of 10 nuclear missiles and ready to launch. As a matter of fact, our crew could have launched those missiles even without orders, but of course we never did that. So sometime in the evening, I don't remember the time, but it was dark. I get a phone call from my guards. I had 6 guards. I was 60 feet underground and locked in. I couldn't leave the capsule for security reasons. But I get a call from the guard, the main guard upstairs, and he says they've been seeing strange lights flying in the sky, and they're going very fast, stopping on a dime, and then reversing course, and then making 90-degree turns very quickly. They made no engine noise, and he wanted to report this, and I even used the word UFO. I said, "You mean like UFOs?" And he said he couldn't explain the lights because they were not aircraft. So I said, "Thank you for your report," and hung up the phone. I didn't know what else to say. He just wanted to report the lights nearby. And then about 5 minutes later, he calls back, and this time he's screaming into the phone. He's frightened, very scared. And I can tell by his voice, he's yelling loudly. And he says there's a glowing red light, large, hovering over the front gate, and it's just sitting there, not moving, but it's pulsating reddish light. And he had all the guards with their weapons and were waiting for orders from me, basically on what to do. And finally, I didn't know what to say. But the way he sounded, he was very serious. And so I thought we could have been under some sort of an attack. And so I ordered him not to let anything inside the gate use whatever force necessary. And then he hung up he had to go because one of the guards was injured. And so he hung up the phone. I went to tell my commander, Fred Mywald, who was taking a rest on a little bed down there. And I went to tell him about the phone calls, and as I was about to tell him, we get a lot of alarms going off in the capsule. We look at our board. We have a status board that has lights showing the status of the missiles, whether they're ready to launch. And they all went from green to red. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. So they were all shut down, disabled, while this object was still overhead. So we went through our procedures. We were shocked, of course, because nothing like that had ever happened before. I was there for 3 years, and we never had any problems like that. These are very reliable systems. But my commander called the base. We were about 100 miles east of the base. He called the base and said, I reported the incident, and the base told him, after he hung up the phone, he turned to me and he said the base told him the same thing happened at another facility, similar to ours. We had control of 10, so there's another facility maybe 30 miles away that had control of 10 nuclear missiles. We also had security lights. We have proximity warning systems, so if somebody tries to enter where the missiles are located, we get these lights go off. So we had lights at 2 of the facilities, and so I called upstairs, and first I asked if the UFO had gone. They said, yeah, it just left, and then I asked to send guards out to the 2 sites that had lights. And they saw the UFOs again over those facilities. So very frightening for them. That's basically what happened. And then later that morning, we were relieved by another crew, taken back to the base, and we had to report to our squadron commander immediately. The squadron commander and the man from Air Force Office of Special Investigation, AFOSI, was there, and we started to tell them the story of what happened, but they didn't seem that interested. It's almost like they already knew everything they needed to know. They just handed me a piece of paper, sign here, never talk about this, ever. Ever, to nobody, not your wife, other airmen, nobody. So we had to sign documents, non-disclosure documents, never to speak about this.
Lei, Robert.
Are you, Robert, completely sure that there is a direct relationship between the problem you had then with the nuclear missiles and the presence of this object?
Presenza di questo oggetto?
Yes, of course. I understand the question. Whether or not this could have been, there's another explanation for this. Well, I have been unable to find any other explanation other than these objects were not from Earth.
Perché questi esseri?
Why do these beings intervene in this way? Why do they do this to military equipment? What is your opinion?
Why are they doing this? Okay. This is speculation on my part, of course. My opinion. I think it was simply a message to us because, like I said, they did not damage the weapons because we had the weapons back up on alert within a day. Yeah. So I think the message was simply to get rid of your nuclear weapons because there's no these are not really weapons of war. Nobody would, in their right mind, start a nuclear war. They're weapons of mass destruction. And in a exchange of nuclear weapons, it would simply be a massive destruction of life and property on Earth. So I think they were just warning us.
So, another extraordinary episode, another extraordinary testimony of someone who experienced this firsthand, who defied military authority by taking risks himself, not respecting that oath bond that he had signed. I asked him why he did it, and he said, "I think the information is too important for humanity, so I didn't care." To better understand, then, why these beings are so alarmed about the Earth's nuclear proliferation, we have to go into more details about what atomic warfare really is, beyond the things that we generically know, about what happens while there is war, and above all, what would happen after the war. And I want to start in my explanation from what an atomic war is, while it is being fought, from an extraterrestrial explanation. In St. Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, we read, "Do not quench the spirit, do not despise prophecies." In 2017, the computer professor Stefano Breccia, born in Ancona, published this book, Mass Contactisms, January 2017, where he recounts the vicissitudes of a group of more than 120 people who had repeated encounters with beings from other worlds between the years 56 and 78. The professor had long-standing personal contacts, but he was never part of the contact group that was called Amicizia, but he was friends with the leader of the group called Bruno Samaciccia. And Bruno Samaciccia, dying, sick, called his friend Breccia and said, "I want to leave my memories of what I experienced." Breccia was against it because he said, "But society is not ready. They will cover you with ridicule." And Samaciccia says, "I don't care. I want to give my testimony." I bought the book. It fascinated me because there were things I had experienced, also because I had met Professor Breccia in a TV program on a Pescara TV channel. I'll tell you the story because there's a bit of humor. I was invited to this program as an expert, and the director, the presenter, said to me, "Look, I will also invite a counterpart who will play the skeptic." He said, "Do you mind?" "No, it's always like that anyway. There is always a moron." Okay. I go to the TV show, and I meet Professor Breccia with this elderly gentleman who looked a lot like that. That elderly gentleman who did the shows with Fiorello for a while. I don't know if you remember him. And I said, "What a strange couple. A professor and one who looked, with the couple, almost like a Sardinian peasant." We sit down and the presenter asks me some questions. I do my whole tirade about the evidence, the UFOs, the military, etc. And the Professor Breccia said, "But yes, it's possible. The number of stars, etc., etc." At one point, the presenter, Dr. Labariel, says, "Listen, Professor, but have you ever had direct experience with UFOs?" Yes. Well, if I have to be honest, yes. In fact, I came with this gentleman called Leandro Trento because we were together. Ah, how nice. Tell us about it. Bah, well, he had an experience. He played hard. It's possible. Who knows? Let's see. Let's hear a bit about the experience. And Breccia says, "We were walking along the coast of Pescara, and at a certain point we saw this light in the sky moving in a strange way." Wow, so it was a UFO. Yes, wait. Then there is this light that started approaching us. Damn, and he says, at the end the disc landed in front of us, at which I jumped. But how? I mean, this one saw a UFO land in front of him and up to this moment. Yes, it's possible. The number of stars. I mean, what the heck? Shame he went away immediately after the broadcast and the book Mass Contactism had not yet been published. Then I became friends with the professor because I made a documentary for RAI. This is the DVD cover. I recovered a lot of ufological material from that period, even the reels with some original footage. This contact group met periodically these beings, whom they called friends or double V56, which simply meant Viva the 56, because the contact began in April 1956 and involved Bruno Sammachichia, Giancarlo De Carlo and Giulio, I don't remember the surname, and everything happened at Roccapia, close to Ascoli Piceno. Then the group spread by word of mouth, and lots of people were involved, many people, even generals of the Carabinieri, prelates, Nobel Prize winners who, if you ask them, say publicly, "No, I don't believe in UFOs." And these beings, again to these humans, most of them were from Abruzzo, but there were also people from Milan, from different places of Italy, and the case was always kept secret. And these beings explained that their mission was to protect the Earth above all, from nuclear proliferation and from the risk that war fought with these kind of weapons could destroy life and, of course, the planet itself. They even tell these people that they have prevented nuclear wars more than once by disabling the missiles, which is what Robert Salas told us. They prevented all nuclear tests planned in orbit. They didn't allow it to us, and there is a former military man called Jacobs who filmed a UFO who deactivated an atomic warhead launched towards the space. So, they transmuted the atomic bomb fissile material into inert material thanks to the incredibly advanced technology that they have. Even, for them, the Earth is a mystical planet, as they call it. It is such a special planet, so beautiful, that there are not many of them around in the galaxy, as they said. Earth has a particularity. It is such a prolific planet that has produced such beautiful life, such diverse mineral kingdoms, minerals, vegetables, animals that it is not easy to find. Generally, the beings said, planets are a little more monotonous. That is, they have more uniformity. They don't have the great biological variety as in the planet Earth. And involved in the friendship group was the consul, Alberto Perego, who also had first-hand experience with flying saucers. And Perego also spread the danger of nuclear power in his books, which are these here, 4 books all self-published. Not only that, thanks to his entourage as a diplomat, Perego was able to obtain certain information, and therefore on his books were reported all extraterrestrial interventions in the geopolitical sphere. They are now almost impossible to find. He published 4 of them, which are these you see. The Mystery of the Flying Saucers Revealed. They are extraterrestrials. Perego Report on the Aviation of Other Planets. Extraterrestrials Are Back of 1960. By the way, the Perego Report was given to the Italian government. At the time there was Giulio Andreotti, who had some ministry, I don't remember which, who wrote personally to the consul saying, "Your report is very interesting." In fact, then, Andreotti creates a department, RGS, of the Italian Air Force that oversees, let's say, cataloging UFO sightings. So, an official military department, which then transfers everything to the CIA, or in any case, to the American services, because we are only a colony, as you well know. And Perego also had direct contact, with George Adamski, the very famous American contactist, who even came to Rome. He had conferences with Perego, they had an epistolary relationship, and Adamski confirmed to Perego that the greatest concern of the extraterrestrials was, precisely, nuclear power. In his last book in 1970, The Extraterrestrials Are Back, Perego announced that he would reveal everything. He says, "I will tell all." He does not say on what, however. he was probably going to reveal that he was in on a massive contact case that was the friendship case. However, this book was never published. Indeed, he had announced it in the previous book. You see, other publications by Alberto Perego, I will say everything under preparation. But I met Perego's daughter. I even interviewed her, and she knew nothing about the book, because I was trying to get my hands on the manuscript. And in this book, The Extraterrestrials Are Back, he publishes 2 photos of an extraterrestrial pilot, of a flying saucer. This one you see in a flight suit. And Perego says, I will say everything. How would that be possible in a few pages? I think I have already said enough. However, I will point out a communique from an external pilot, delivered to a friend of mine who was flown in a flying saucer. So, basically, I suspect that the disc who stopped the missiles from the Malmstrom base was piloted by this gentleman with an Italian on board who was part of the friendship case because the dates are the same. And this is the extraterrestrial message from this pilot explaining what a nuclear war is. So, I preferred to voice it, among other things, the beautiful voice of Luigi Mingarini, whom I publicly thank, a professional speaker, who also voiced the interview of Robert Salas, and who is giving us a help, free of charge, to disseminate these important witnesses. And this is the statement Perego publishes in his book.
In the years that will follow, the peoples of the earth will have to learn many truths that, in some cases, will completely upside down useless and harmful institutions and systems of life. But the most actual and urgent of these truths to be put into practice is the total abolition of atomic weapons through international treaties and agreements. Strive, therefore, by all means for this to happen. Otherwise, we shall be forced to give you hard lessons, in comparison with which those you have had in the past will be considered mild. Are they threats? Yes, they are threats, cause in your conceit you do not have the right to destroy your world, nor to unbalance the laws of creation, and with them your solar system and our galaxy. You are not the only living beings, and you are not the owners of creation, as you have defined yourselves. You are a subrace, as stubborn as you are ignorant, who through the ages still do not understand who the Creator is, what His power is, and what His laws are. Because you create by yourselves, you have created the earth with all its riches and an abject system of living. This you have created yourselves. True ravenous and selfish wolves, who cares only to ephemeral earthly wealth, for which you slaughter yourselves in the most hideous manner. You do not understand that this wealth serves you only to spend time over the earth. At the moment of your passing away, the earth will take back from you its contribution misused by you. Thus, you will be left with nothing but only guilt to atone for. Therefore, I want to talk to you about some consequences caused from future war. An H-bomb kills and destroys in many ways depending on the height at which it is detonated. If it explodes on the ground, the power of the explosion digs a crater up to 1.5 kilometers wide, destroying everything within many kilometers. No human work can survive. If instead it explodes high in the air where the air is finer, most of detonation became heat, creating a fire danger. For example, a 20 megaton bomb exploding in the air gives off an enormous heat wave over an area of about 15,000 square kilometers. The explosive power of such a weapon emits a flash faster than the blink of an eye, bright enough to blind you and burn your eyes even many kilometers away. As it explodes, it grows in few seconds to a ball of fire 4 kilometers wide and as hot as the central core of a star. If it explodes on the ground, the crater will be up to 50 meters deep, and the wave of the blast will travel underground in all directions. solicit natural forces causing earthquakes, earthquakes in sea and volcanic eruptions. It will produce serious and fatal burns up to 50 kilometers away. It will cause fires up to 70 kilometers away, destroying buildings, bridges, roads, aqueducts, and pipes of all kinds. Everything that passes through pipes or reservoirs will catch fire. Contributing to destroy it will throw people materials up to more than 20 kilometers away. In a city of 2 million inhabitants, 1.5 million will die immediately. The rest severely injured and burnt, with no means to heal themselves, will be condemned to die slowly, also because no other help will come from outside. The above is caused by a single 20 megaton bomb. Imagine what hundreds of 100 megaton bombs exploding over all the major cities would produce. Think for a moment what would happen to the continents, the atmosphere, the Earth's core, and the magnetic axis that holds it in orbit in the solar system. Do you realize that once unleashed, these forces irrationally created by you, reconstituted from the natural ones from which you extirpated them, they will surpass in destructive power any known scientific knowledge, and will disarray on you regardless of political, social, and economic distinctions. The multiple explosions may, moreover, ignite your atmosphere in a gigantic firestorm that, sucking in the air like many typhoons, will fan the flames until the total destruction of whatever it finds in its path. You had an example of this in the past war with the simple incendiary bombs dropped on Hamburg, on Tokyo, on Dresden, and as last with the first H-bombs, exploded on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, think well of what you do, and hear the advice of brothers from other worlds, who in their wisdom have managed for centuries to settle disagreements and solve critical problems, nullifying and rendering meaningless the words war, hatred, racism, selfishness, and finally, conceit. They preach peace against war, love against hate, compromise against selfishness, the abolition of atomic weapons, the science and the faith of God against positivist, atheistic, and opportunistic science. And finally, it speaks of our coming. Costs we will come. In doing so, you will be in the right, in the true, and without fear. Continue on the path you have taken, at the end of which you will find your Creator, and with Him, your just reward. Having said this last sentence, the pilot continued, "Now, I will show you the nuclear power plants of some Western nations." A screen lit up and I saw the following centers. For Italy, the Garigliano, Latina, and Ispra power plants. For Germany and Austria, the Stuttgart, Grundemmingen, Hanover, and West Berlin power stations. For France, the Marcoule, Chinon, Chooz, and Mons d'Arrée power stations. And for England, the Dungeness, Bradwell, Berkeley, Sizewell, Hinckley, Point Oldbury, Torness, and Calder Hall bases. At these bases, thousands of men were working, some in white coats with their faces covered by masks. They looked like anthills. The pilot said to me, "This is where your brothers are building what will destroy you. Now I will show you how stupidly some war devices have been prepared to kill you in a few minutes." In a few minutes we were at the indicated location. The disc stopped again. The screen lit up and the pilot said, "This is American territory. We are in the state of Montana. Below you there is Malmstrom Missile Base, and that is the town of Great Falls. Below us are 150 Minutemen, placed on underground ramps."
The pilot takes him right over the base where Salas was.
Andiamo a vedere quello che
Let's see what is the size of the atomic arsenal that exists nowadays. It is, however, a very topical message because, I repeat, we are running, with the crisis that exists between East and West, we are running this danger again. Message of Fatima. Satan reigns over the highest places, determining the course of things. He will succeed in seducing the spirits of the great scientists who invent the weapons by which it will be possible to destroy a large part of humanity in a few minutes. He will have in his power the powerful men who govern the peoples and will incite them to manufacture enormous quantities of those weapons. Prophecy sadly fulfilled. This is the world's arsenal. The United States has 5,228 warheads and Russia, 5,177 warheads. In Europe, the countries who have with their own nuclear warheads are France, which has 290, England, 225. Then we also have China, which has 350 warheads, Pakistan, 165, India, 160. Israel has 90, unofficially. Israel has never made it official, but there are rumors that it actually has around 400. This number is currently small compared to the Cold War era, but it is enough to destroy planet Earth dozens and dozens of times over. When I say destroy the planet, I mean pulverize it, not just extinguish life, tear it apart. This happened 75 million years ago in the solar system, where an ancient civilization, very ancient, using nuclear power badly, caused an explosion that disintegrated their own planet, which today the remains are the asteroid belt and all the rings, mainly those of Saturn, but also those of Jupiter and the other planets of the solar system, which are the debris captured by the gravity of this planet after the explosion and the disintegration of the planet Malona. That's what it was called. In Italy, we have between 40 and 90 American atomic warheads, which are mainly at the Aviano and Gaeti bases, and perhaps others. And yet, we have in our Constitution that we do not proliferate atomic weapons, but our politicians evidently have the Constitution written on toilet paper, and they use it there, violating it at every turn, while the people, unfortunately, remain indifferent. Italy was supposed to reject these atomic weapons, but politicians get corrupted. The people have their heads elsewhere, and things follow this course. Other European nations with American nukes are Belgium, Germany, and Holland. They have about 20 each one of them, and Turkey over 50. Turkey is a very important NATO component. So, in total, there are more than 13,250 atomic warheads on Earth. So the prophecy of the Holy Mother at Fatima has absolutely been fulfilled. Deuteronomy 30. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. The atomic age has begun with the American test on 16th July 1945. Now there is a film in the cinema, Oppenheimer, who together with Fermi and the Via Panisperna group, with Einstein, etc., created the atomic bomb. Code name, Trinity. Perhaps, unknowingly, the devil put it into their heads that they were defying God and His law. It was exploded in the desert de la Jornada del Muerto, the desert of the Day of the Dead. So, there is this cynical demonic irony of these madmen who did this. Then Oppenheimer and Einstein bitterly regretted what they had done, but it was too late. They had opened the terrible Pandora's box of nuclear power. It was exploded about 56 kilometers southeast of Socorro, an area full of sightings, in New Mexico, a 25-kiloton bomb. This is the Trinity explosion. Which, compared to what exists today, is really a firecracker. In the beginning, It was madness. In the early years of the atomic tests, there were people, you see, sitting on the benches enjoying the mushroom cloud, cameramen, the military, and so on. And they even sent the military to picnic on the spot where the bomb had exploded. I mean, these madmen were experimenting on people's lives. Even real shows were organized. You see, this is a billboard from that time. A poster. Witness the power of the atomic bomb. $3 per person. I mean, they were crazy. And the tests were being done a short distance from the city of Las Vegas. In fact, in this photo, there is the city and, you see, the atomic mushroom from one of the tests. But the most horrifying thing is this map here. They did them all in the wind. So, all the atomic explosions literally spread radioactivity all over the United States of America. Only the criminally insane could think of doing this to their own population. Now, there is a fact, which our science is beginning to understand: radioactivity causes madness. This insanity has a very bad specification. It makes you terribly hateful and aggressive. Therefore, the escalation of violence that there's in the world is because humanity is impregnated with radioactivity and has gone mad. The people are mad. That is to say, a people that lives its life as if nothing existed, planning a future that does not exist instead of striving to make this future real, is a people of madness. Because these facts that I am telling you, apart from extraterrestrials, are scientific, historical facts. It happened. This is a map from the U.S. Weather Service. These are the fallout models. It means the actual radioactive fallout of the U.S. atomic tests on its own population. What kind of world are we livening? I do sometimes question myself. I say, God, what fault do I have for being incarnated in a world of fools like this? I must have bad karma. And this is the map, you see. Density of cesium-137 deposits, resulting from the cumulative effect of the Nevada atomic tests. The accumulation generally decreases with the distance of the test site, which you see here is the one with the highest concentration, but in fact, it has literally littered the entire land of the United States of America. However, some isolated locations, also due to precipitation, have large densities of cesium-137, which is a product that accumulates in the body. Why is cancer everywhere nowadays? Has cancer become almost worse than a cold? This is why. Because the radioactive rays from the atmospheric tests have been taken by the high-altitude winds of the stratosphere, and they have been spread all over planet Earth in a few hours. So planet Earth is getting increasingly sickened because of this madness against which the masses do nothing. I saw in the 2 years of the pandemic the so-called awakened against the sting, against. Where are they now? What kind of awakening was that? All of this was just to try to protect their own asses, but it wasn't a real awakening, because now that they've opened the borders and we can all wander around like before, they don't give a damn. Whilst in Europe, we have a very dangerous war. But in order to understand this nuclear madness, we have to see what it causes to the planet. This is a video that shows the atomic tests carried out from 45 to 99. So I think that the last ones that North Korea and Pakistan did are missing. But look how crazy is this? Keeping in mind that what we've seen in the United States are just the tests done in Nevada, country by country. China, 45 tests. France, 210 tests. A great war will be unleashed in the second half of the 20th century. This is the war against us. Soviet Union, 715. Look at this madness. The Americans, 1032 tests, not just in Nevada. So, a frightful war has been fought, not in the classical way, which we are risking. But the devastation, our health, the diseases, the agonies in families, the mournings come from this. Because the planet gives us life, it does not give us death. But if we are lunatics freaks and we do not take care of what happens in our society, thinking that someone else will do it anyway, but I am that someone else. It is you. You see, at the end, I, as a poor peasant's son, said, I must do something. I cannot stay inert in front of this havoc. So, my will to do something, according to AIC's famous law, today allows me to bring awareness among tens, and perhaps hundreds of thousands of people. So, take the first step. Don't say, yeah, but what can I do anyway? Take the first step. What's the first step? Inform yourself. Read. Become aware that you live in a society. You are not isolated on a small planet, alone on your own, off the earth. You exist. Society is not outside us. We are society. Society is made up of individuals. By Pier Giorgio, by Joseph, by John, by Beatrice, by Mary. This is society. Instead, it seems that society is going wrong. But you are society. There isn't a society in you. Society is us. So who has to work hard in the society to get things done if we are uncaring, selfish, indifferent? The human being is normally belligerent with everything. Christ says, "For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them." But here, put 2 terrestrials together, and there is the devil. Instantly. We are always belligerent in cars, in family, with the neighbors. Now I'm in Santa Margherita di Pula. Beautiful, but I say, a beautiful pine forest, all private. But why can't I walk among the pine trees? If I'm honest, I won't touch anything, because the law of cause and effect would kick my ass. So, we live in fences, which are all the little animal territories of belligerent people who shoot you if you jump the fence. This is our reality. But the planet is ours, not someone else's. Let's free everyone. Let's open the borders. Let's hug each other. Let's grow together. Let's learn that the Creator exists and there are laws. But if everyone listens to Bruno Vespa or Mintina, omen in nomen, we must evolve, friends. Because we are risking something scary, we are already living it, but we are risking a lot. Look at Europe. Recently, 2020, the Scientific Reports Journal published a new map of radioactivity in Europe that shows where cesium and plutonium are produced. Plutonium, very toxic. Then I will tell you the figures produced by the Chernobyl disaster and the nuclear tests of past decades, because they fired all over the world. Those radioactive powders have gone around the planet many times and are here in Cagliari, in Santa Margherita, in Barati di San Pietro, in Gubbio. They are everywhere, and these things take tens of thousands of years to lose their toxicity. So it is, in fact, forever. It was not a diamond, it was a radionuclide. It is forever. Look at this. Presence of cesium-137 in Europe. In northern Italy, look. Sardinia has less, but it has it. By the way, we have military servitude, and they test everything there. In fact, terrible things happen in those areas. Animals and malformed children. But we Sardinians are an island people, isolated and insulating, except for electricity. We cannot unite because this island, which is my homeland, our homeland, is so beautiful that we should live like pashas, if only we knew how to unite. Instead, we are a bunch of dickheads, always quarreling, always fighting.
Sempre in lite.
Yesterday I was told a joke about the genie in the lamp. The genie says, "I'll grant you one wish, but I'll give your neighbor twice as much." Ah! Gouge out my eye, bogami and do ogu, so the neighbor gets both his eyes gouged out. Thank you, Nicola, for I sold it right away. Studies over the last 20 years have shown that cesium-137 can cause several serious health problems, especially in children who habitually ingest contaminated food. Studies on human autopsy bodies have shown that cesium-137 concentrates in vital human organs: endocrine glands, heart, pancreas, brain, stomach, and spleen. Ah! Cancer seems to come out this way. But in my grandfather's time, it wasn't like that. My grandfather, who called the airplane Suguzon e Veru, says grandfather, it's an airplane. Suguzon e Veru.
Ha ragione. Quello è vero.
While short-lived radionuclides self-destruct in the stratosphere, long-lived radionuclides such as cesium-137, strontium-90, which is really strontium, and plutonium fall out of the stratosphere for many years, because there are no cloud systems in the stratosphere, and therefore they cannot fall out with the rains. So they spin and fall, spreading all over planet Earth. Plutonium has a half-life of 2040-100 years, i.e., it will take 241,000 years for most of the plutonium to disappear. In fact, in human terms, it lasts forever. As I said before, the lethality of plutonium is very high. 15 millionths of a gram, if inhaled, causes lung cancer. A few thousandths of a gram cause death from pulmonary fibrosis. And we could go on and on. So it is not only asbestos that causes fibrosis, but also mainly plutonium. Map of plutonium in Europe. There is a lot of it, even you see in Italy. A Great War Against Humanity. Rosalie Bertell, an environmentalist who died in 2012, wrote, "Until 1963, the military carried out nuclear tests in the atmosphere, contaminating it. It is estimated that these tests caused 1.5 million deaths among children across the planet and 2 million deaths from bone cancer, thyroid cancer, or leukemia. Even small increases in electromagnetic radiation can cause health problems such as cataracts and leukemia, so mobile phones can alter brain chemistry, blood sugar levels, blood pressure, and heart rate. Radioactive pollution of the Earth's surface atmosphere has already caused incalculable damage, infirmity, contamination of vast areas by accidents or nuclear tests, which have become virtually uninhabitable. 20 years ago, Rosalie Bertell estimated the victims of the nuclear age in 1.3 billion years. They say, there hasn't been a war. Let's see. Now we have heard the extraterrestrial pilot who told us and explained in a fairly straightforward form what the atomic war is. Let's see what the nuclear winter is. That is, the post-war period. Marco 13. In those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. This is a prophetic picture showing the atomic destruction of the city of Paris. These are the comparisons. These are the two firecrackers of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which together made almost 300,000 deaths. without considering those who died later with diseases. 15 and 21 kilotons in Nagasaki as the Trinity. La Licorne, France, a megaton, mushroom back then 5 kilometers. Hiroshima, mushroom 6 kilometers. Nagasaki, Mount Everest, 8 kilometers, 11 kilometers the height of a normal airliner. The Licorne, France, fired in 1970, broke through the troposphere and hurled radioactive dust into the zonosphere, which is part of the stratosphere. The 15-megaton Castle Bravo, US, fired in 51, broke through the troposphere and into the middle of the stratosphere, polluting the entire ozone layer. The Tsar Bomba, which is the most powerful bomb ever detonated on Earth, the shock wave went 3 times around the Earth and broke through doors and windows over 1,000 kilometers away, and the mushroom cloud reached the beautiful height of 61 kilometers. It even broke through the stratosphere and entered the mesosphere. They don't give us this information, because if we had this information, maybe we would get off our butts. Because this is a war against us. This type of weapon has no borders. It does not consider races, religious beliefs, political beliefs. It is for everyone, including the rich, including the powerful. But the powerful are not like us. They are another race. They are a race of their own. They do not think like us, because they are literally possessed by the devil, and these things are true. The devil, who does the things we have seen in that movie, it was called The Exorcist. But that is a cheap devil, truly a poor devil. The scariest devils are the powerful of the world who play with these things, the scientists who study them, and those who manufacture them. But we are responsible, because the scientist, the politician, the military man, who makes these things, is the son of a couple. But what kind of education have you given your children? So, it starts with us. We cannot generate children who then do these things. We must give them an education, ethics. We must inform ourselves. We can't live because there's the Grand Prix. Who wins the Ferrari? What the hell is that? Can we take an interest in this nonsense? Football San Remo. When we have terrible problems in our world. I am bewildered by the behavior of human society. Not only all of us, indeed you are already special, because you are here today listening to this poor fool, but most people outside live in another time, in another world. It is not located in the reality of the earthly world, which is frightening. The most serious disease on the planet is hunger. Europe wastes billions of tons of food every year, while children starve to death. 1 every 3 seconds. What kind of people are we? What kind of people are we? Some would say, Zenta rubia, but those have wings. The numbers of a nuclear war are frightening. In the event of the outbreak of such a conflict, fought, hypothetically, between the United States and Russia, 1,600 to 2,000 U.S. and Russian strategic nuclear weapons, strategic weapons are the most powerful, tactical weapons are the least powerful, would be launched within 2 to 14 minutes against targets in the United States, Europe, and Russia. Some of the remaining deployed and operational U.S. and Russian nuclear weapons would also be detonated. This is the difference between a bomb of 6, a small one let's say, a regular atomic bomb like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is a strategic atomic bomb. Radius 6.5 kilometers, radius 200 kilometers. No survivors in the blast zone. Explosion from a nuclear bomb that doesn't even reach a megaton. 800 kilotons. Hundreds of large cities in the US and Europe and Russia would be engulfed by massive nuclear storms that would burn urban areas covering tens or hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. The conflict could also include China and other NATO member states, which of course would make the situation worse as a result of this war.
A seguito di questa
Nuclear detonations in cities and industrial areas would, according to scientists, produce about 150 million tons of radioactive dust, which would be thrown into the atmosphere at great heights, as we have seen, as far as the stratosphere.
alla stratosfera.
These dusts would settle in the stratosphere, where strong winds would spread it planet-wide within about 10 days into the stratosphere. There are no cloud systems capable of generating rainfall, so the dusts would remain in suspension for 10 years or more, preventing most of the sunlight from illuminating and warming the Earth. This is the model that scientists have developed of the diffusion of the dust of an atomic war based on the algorithms of the dust diffusion of volcanic explosions.
Esplosioni vulcaniche.
This would happen in about a month and a half. So even if the nations involved were only the Russians and the US, you have in fact screwed the planet. The whole planet. Because, I repeat, arriving in the stratosphere, 2.5 months arriving in the stratosphere with its very strong winds distributes them over 2.5 months, and the planet is blacked out. This is what nuclear winter causes. Nuclear winter, let's see, would block 70% of the sun's heat from reaching the Earth's surface in the northern hemisphere, where the Russians and the United States are, and up to 35% in the southern hemisphere. The intensity of daylight in the northern hemisphere, on a cloudy day, would be similar to what it is at midnight during a full moon, i.e., without the warming of sunlight, the Earth would cool down drastically. Average daily temperatures would drop below zero and remain so for 1 to 3 years. The climate would become colder than that of the last ice age, which peaked between 25,000 and 18,000 years ago, i.e., the consequence would be nuclear winter and a subsequent terrifying global famine. These would be the temperatures in our facade of the planet. Minus 12.5 degrees, minus 30 degrees, minus 35 degrees, minus 15 degrees in the central regions of the northern hemisphere. Daily minimum temperatures would fall below zero every day for 1 to 3 years. At night, there would be deadly night frosts. Consider that after such a holocaust, there would be a shortage of electricity everywhere. There would also be a decrease in global average rainfall of at least 45% due to the prolonged cold. With such a climate for this many years, it would be impossible to have any kind of food harvest, and of course to maintain livestock farms. For at least 10 years, there would be no growing season for crops. What are you eating? Money? Bills? The credit card? What do you eat? Food supplies, especially wheat, would be depleted in a few months. 4-5 months maximum. And most humans and land animals, including those not in war zones, would eventually starve to death in a famine caused by the aftermath of nuclear war. Worse, since we are not yet considering the nuclear war aftermath, we are not yet considering the effects of the radioactivity that would also increase due to the more than 400 civil nuclear power plants around the world, which, involved in the atomic holocaust, would result in additional terrible catastrophes. If we think of what happened in Chernobyl or Fukushima, we have only a faint idea. But what is the biggest risk, as the electricity lacks? The melting core, which generates the steam to then make the electricity with the turbines, cannot be contained in any existing element, because the strongest, most resistant steel melts at around 2,000 degrees. The core exceeds 4,000 degrees, so this would create what is called the Chinese syndrome, i.e., as the electrical power fails, one of the effects is that the rods of radioactive material would no longer be cooled into cores. So, the rods of fissile material cooled with water, therefore, with electricity, which is what happened in Fukushima. The tsunami wiped out the service generators, the backup generators, because the electricity was expected to fall. Instead, the tsunami came, and not only did the power go out, but it threw out all the generators and therefore the cores melted. I have heard that some of the rods actually ended up in the sea, but they don't say it, and those sink, because at 4,000 degrees it melts all the ground without a problem.
Perché a 4.000 gradi fonde tutto il terreno senza problemi.
Risking the so-called Chinese syndrome, which assumes that in the event of an accident at a nuclear power plant, during which the reactor core melts, nothing would be able to contain it because of the very high temperatures reached well above the melting point of the strongest metals. As I said, therefore, this radioactive material would melt whatever it encountered, piercing the Earth's crust, theoretically going all the way down to the other side of the world as far as China, but it will never get there because as it goes down, it is more likely to encounter a large aquifer and generate a frightening underground explosion, which would literally rip the planet apart, thus producing further destruction and contamination. This is the map of the world's existing power plants. There are over 450 active ones and under construction ones, with thousands of tons of radioactive material. Question: why don't we abolish these power stations too? If we took an interest, we would discover that some innovative technologies have existed for many decades, and they are capable of producing free energy, which is not released. It harms the economic power of the big oil companies, gas companies, and so on. So, in the end, it's always just about money. The damn money. The god of the modern age. So, what we use as alternative energy is a joke. Wind and solar panels are a laughingstock, not an alternative. Rubbia had already designed the solar thermodynamic, which is much more efficient than solar panels. They threw his project out of Italy. The Spanish and some African states are doing it. Even extraterrestrials, through Eugenio Siragusa, said they would have helped terrestrials to build an orbital satellite to generate clean energy. Adoniasis to Earth Scientists 1973. It is an opportune time for you to make a serious effort to put into practice the project of building an artificial laboratory satellite, like Phobos, which is a Mars satellite built by them, capable of transforming solar energy into motive power and to channel this to your planet. Sooner or later, you will be forced to resort to this inexhaustible source of clean energy, which is also capable of definitively taking you out of the age of combustion, including nuclear, of course, with immense benefits on an ecological and vital level. Even the temporary exploitation of the thermal flows of volcanoes that are still active could greatly ease a momentary difficulty. But it is necessary to press for the outline project that is the construction in space of one or more orbiting laboratories with the specific task of transforming solar energy. The undertaking requires a considerable collective effort. But if conscious responsibility prevails, the construction of this beneficial project will be possible. We will help you by mentally programming those who will make themselves available for the study and realization of this project, which we call in your language, From Heaven to Earth. This is the photo of the scientist Adoniasis. He is a being of light from the fifth dimension, who was Eugenio Siragusa's spiritual guide. And it is the most important photo in the entire history of mankind, because never have these beings issued direct documents of their astral nature. That is, they are beings living in the suns. In a message a few months earlier, again, Adoniesis, they are androgenic beings. You see, it has the eye of the masculine Tao, and it has the eye of feminine love. The story of eternal love is a big joke. Our path is the return to androgyny. We experiment a little bit here, a little bit there, because we have to make the masculine and feminine energies our own, in order to reunite within ourselves and return consciously to where we came from. Adoniesis had explained what the Martian satellite Phobos was and what it was for, and had also made remarks that show how much they know about the true cause of the disastrous conditions of humanity and what are the real forces that oppose these projects. This statement is also from 73 August. Satellite of the planet Mars Phobos. It is an artificial laboratory satellite put into orbit by our science to perform important functions. I should add, all attempts to violate Phobos have been sabotaged, both American and Russian missions. They do not allow it because they know that Phobos is not natural. The major activity of Phobos is to transform and channel an enormous amount of energy onto the planet via the numerous generating stations installed on it. This energy allows us to have, on Mars, an inexhaustible pure motive power to fully serve our many bases and countless instruments in continuous productivity. From this cosmic energy, we also draw the primary element indispensable for the psychization or animation of materializing elements capable of producing themselves according to our necessary need, i.e., they have a technology, a science, that allows them to create matter directly from photons of light. Psychization occurs in nature through photosynthesis, where sunlight becomes leaf, becomes sap, becomes tree trunk, becomes fruit. They do this with their science. They can do this. They can, even from light, create life. We, on the other hand, can only take a cell, duplicate it, and play with it, but we are not able to even create a blade of grass yet, because it takes a much more evolved science. With sunlight, our science achieves balanced vital values, perfectly suited to harmonize our psychophysical astral structures. Eugenio asks Adoniesis, but can we do it too? Of course you can. Today your science is in a position to carry out this useful undertaking and to resolve, in an opportune time, the serious problem that is already looming, the depletion of the elements from which you have drawn your traditional fuel, that is, hydrocarbons. Such a constructive undertaking would grant you the privilege of exiting, definitively, from the era of combustion with benefits, with exceptional benefits on the ecological levels of your very existence, which is seriously threatened by a continuous swarming of toxic waste debris produced, principally, by the combustion of the elements. It would be right and proper to immediately provide for the construction of this beneficial scientific means. But I believe that the great financiers of the lucrative oil industries will not agree, and will even try in every way to dissuade those who would attempt to discuss a realization that could seriously compromise the resources of their wealth. We know very well the selfishness that dwells in certain types of men who run the politics, science, and finance of your world. We know that they would not hesitate for a single moment to put the life of humanity before their filthy lusts for wealth, power, and pride. That is what they do every single day. And it is not that the people are any better. We have seen the 5 stables, unfortunately. From the stars to the stables, we have seen Ms. Maloney, who has preached well and is razzing very, very badly. And again, due to the gigantic fires caused by nuclear explosions in cities and industries of various kinds and types, a huge amount of toxic chemicals, such as dioxin and many others, would be produced and dispersed into the atmosphere, worsening an already appalling situation. Not only that, all the plastic around the planet would catch fire. A convenient way to eliminate it. But it also eliminates us. The sun would heat the stratospheric dust layer 150 million tons up to the boiling point of water, which is 100 degrees. This would cause massive destruction of the stratospheric ozone layer that protects the Earth from dangerous UVB and UVC ultraviolet light. Thus, a planetary ozone hole would be produced. Then, there would no longer be the shield that protects us from the sun's ultraviolet rays, to the point that a fair-skinned person in the US or Northern Europe, standing outside in the midday sun, would suffer a painful sunburn in just 7 minutes of exposure. These levels of ultraviolet radiation could cause blindness in many animals, and of course, seriously damage the eyesight of humans as well. The rapidity of the changes induced by thermonuclear war, which would manifest themselves in a matter of days and weeks, would not give human populations and the entire plant and animal kingdom time to adapt. With the addition of all these situations and more, terrestrial ecosystems, including marine ecosystems, which are already severely stressed, would permanently collapse. And let the rich and powerful have no illusions. Because even those who have created for themselves these luxurious shelters, underground bunkers equipped with food, water, energy, and medical supplies for many years, would not survive the terribly hostile post-atomic war environment, because that radioactivity is forever. So, sooner or later, you get over it. But then, even as luxurious as it is, can you imagine living in confinement your whole life? You, your children, your grandchildren? I mean, it's crazy. The rapidity and global incidence of these situations would actually cause the extinction of life on Earth. This is planet Earth after 100 days. From space, the planet would appear dark, covered with a dense layer of smoke and dust, a radioactive cosmic tomb for a cursed race, devoured by selfishness, greed, and hatred, which has failed to love itself, life, and its wonderful common home that is the beautiful planet Earth. But are we running this risk? Paul again. And when they say peace and safety, then suddenly ruin shall come upon them, like the pangs of a pregnant woman, and none shall escape. Because they are telling us, these criminals, that we are sending weapons to make peace. So the government tells us, violating the Constitution and spending all that money that is not allocated for schools, hospitals, helping the needy, and for retirees. But what is wrong with these people? These Italians? If you are there, please strike a blow. But is it possible? Is it possible that you have to bother the Madonna, God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the humanity of other worlds, and we are comfortably sitting around eating sausages and carousel bread? Bloody hell! I mean, I go mad. And I go mad because I have touched things with my own hands. It's all terribly true. Dim the lights, please.
Происходит прямо сейчас на моих глазах. Военные самолеты, непонятно, Украина.
Putin orders attack on Ukraine. The Donbas People's Republic has asked Russia for help. We will strive for demilitarization and
These are dramatic hours now. a large-scale joint operation.
Принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
At least 3 people died in this morning's explosion at the Kirk Bridge connecting.
Ukraine woke up under bombs, at least 8 victims, 5 in the attack.
$1.5 billion for Ukraine. That's the figure put on the table.
Joe Biden agreed with European partners in NATO and G7.
President Zelensky says the world must act now to stop Russia's nuclear threat.
Any use of atomic weapons will have serious consequences for Russia.
Le Cornu stated that the aid will include equipment for the French army.
Under NATO, it will rise to about 240,000.
Joe Biden stated that the risk of Armageddon, of nuclear apocalypse, is at the highest level. To protect Russia and our people, we will use all means at our disposal.
The economic resources for Ukraine this time to buy weapons.
Tengo que anunciar hoy que Rusia suspende su participación en el Tratado de Reducción de Armas Estratégicas.
A dictator with insane troops. In these terms, U.S. President Joe Biden.
A Russian nuclear weapons depot will be present on Belarusian soil.
Exponential increase in North Korea's nuclear arsenal.
I think we are on the eve of war, of a great war. What is happening before our eyes is, as someone has already said, the beginning of World War III.
Sta accadendo adesso.
It is happening now. The warlords have decided that we must not live. I, looking at those images, say, but how many resources do we waste on destruction? Because those things there, planes, ships, tanks, have costs. Not so much the money, which we create from nothing. Those don't count. They are pieces of paper, numbers on a keyboard, but they are resources, metals, fuels, human resources. The biggest polluting source on the planet is the Pentagon, the US military. And they tell us that we have to save the droplet of water, that you have to recycle. Bullshit. I'm not saying we don't need to. But faced with those scenarios, they have to change. And especially us. Because these people are crazy. They're criminals. The Biden family is involved in the worst things. Ukraine was the US cesspool. Trafficking of children, organs. Children sold to rich pedophiles all over the planet. The Russians came in and broke it all down. More than 100 laboratories where they experimented on the plague, on smallpox. I mean, that's the humanity of this world. I say, what have we got? What have we got? Where's the problem? Let's find a doctor, somebody. There is only one problem. Selfishness, lack of love, disinterest, indifference, that someone else has to take care of it. Sometimes people write to me asking me things as if I were born learned. But I am a mechanical expert. I used to be a railway man. I didn't know any of this. Then I met a wise man. I had experiences with sane people from other worlds, and I changed my life. I said, damn, I too am part of the indifferent, apathetic mass that minds its own business, thinking that someone else will solve the problem. There is no one else but us, because those in governments are criminals. All of them. As soon as you walk into that room there, you're ruined. Like most of the 5 stars are ruined, because they become accomplices to very serious murders. Ms. Maloney has become a criminal, sending the weapons with which Ukrainians kill Russians and provoking the reaction of Russians who kill Ukrainians. We don't have to make war for peace. We must make peace for good and abolish everything, armies, weapons, atomic bombs. The people have this power if they want to, but they keep us disunited by feeding the worst of us with art, culture, films, to keep Satan's merry-go-round going. And we fall for it, because it is convenient. But it leads to all this. So I humbly bring my small grain to this great cause of humanity. Then each one chooses for himself what to do. It is still not too late. It is still not too late. Maybe something, at least snatch a few more souls from Satan, we can do. Because these beings will prevent the destruction of the planet anyway. But they will do nothing to help those who have washed their hands of it like Pilate. This is the message they ask me to bring, and which I bring with humility. And I close with their last message given in 2007 to Giorgio Bongiovanni. But he also received one a few hours ago where they say, what do you choose, live or die? Setun Shenar and Ithakar from the spaceship Pax communicate, we have a salvation program that concerns the physical survival of mankind, and also the spiritual salvation of mankind. A few million people on your planet are being watched over and protected by us. We call them called souls or awakened souls, which I repeat are not the 2-year pandemic souls. That is another category. In the event of a nuclear war, these souls would be picked up by us, taken to safe places, such as, for example, to the 2 satellites of Jupiter, Io and Europa, which can support life for a few weeks or even months, and then, after we have purified your world, bring them back to earth to begin in peace, love, brotherhood, and justice. Above all justice, a new course of evolution, paradise, Eden, new kingdom, etc. This program, which we have called Sarah's since time immemorial, is in the hands and solar mind of Adonai, who is the Father of Christ, and his Son, the Christ. We rely on them and devoutly entrust ourselves to them. We also want to add, to be clear and not to be shattered, that the elect and the called are for us all those beings, children, men and women, who regardless of their political, religious, or scientific beliefs, work for the good of humanity selflessly. For children in particular, we make no exception, whether they are children of good beings or of bad beings, so they will take away all the living children on planet Earth at the time of the eventual atomic holocaust. They take them all away, all of them. And the spaceships to pick them up are already on Earth. The bigger ones orbit outside the solar system because they are so big that they would disrupt the orbit of the planets. Think what fantastic technology these beings have. We have been instructed to announce to you by our cosmic masters. This we have been instructed to announce to you by our cosmic masters, and this we have told you in the hope that your common sense will not make you forget the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and that the Lord God is infinite love but also universal and cosmic justice. We recommend serenity and faith for the righteous and blessed on mission on earth. Your brothers of light Seton, Shinar, and Ithakar, from the spaceship Mother Pax, via Giorgio Bongiovanni, stigmatized. I thank you. I sincerely hope that I have ruined your Saturday. And that, as you leave this room, this meeting has served to put in your hearts that fire of renewal that will take us to a wonderful world after a terrible catastrophe. Now, room for your questions. A microphone, guys. Let's talk about football. The league title. Who won the league title? The nuclear winter is scary. Yes, then there's the gentleman, slowly. Please.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name's Carlo. I've been following you for over 10 years.
Wow, thank you, Carlo.
I really respect you for all the research aspects you do in all subjects. Let's just say I've gone over them more than once at your YouTube conferences. But now I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, please.
Because I don't currently have the answer. I hope you'll give it to me.
Yes.
So, we are practically within one dimension. And since we are in a multidimensionality of the universe, the question is this. But also, in the other types of frequencies in the multiverse, we have a so-called evolution like that of this dimension? That is, of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensions? I mean, even in the other frequencies, do they have the same type of evolution?
No.
Ogni dimensione di fatto rappresenta.
Each dimension, in fact, represents a condition of being. So, if you are in the third dimension, incarnated in the third dimension, but in fact, the dimension where the ego-sum spirit manifests is fourth dimension, because it is the fourth element. The mineral, the vegetable, the animal, the human, which is not the body, the human is the spirit intelligence. So, we are the fourth spiritual dimension experiencing in the third dimension to definitely enter the fourth dimension, where there is a change in our soul structure and also physical structure. which really becomes fourth dimension. So we, in fact, have 600 million years of history. To close the cycle, we have 100 million to go. So there will be, for humanity that wins this, let's say, this contest to salvation, there will be 100 million years of wonderful four-dimensional evolution within cosmic humanity. So we are what we are. So there is no evolution of yours in another dimension, because our dimension is the physical dimension and the post-mortem dimension. It is a continuous cycle, because as long as we are primarily tied to negative karmic condition, we need to return quickly to the afterlife. So, our life is short because of this, because the load of mistakes and sins, which we carry over 60, 70, 80 years, is already so bad that we have to go to the afterlife, reset, and come back to try to lower this load. When we manage, over several lifetimes, to lower this load, we have a dimensional leap. Because, in the law of nature, these things happen by natural process, just as incarnation and disincarnation occur by natural process. So there is no dimension other than this one where you experience. You are here. That is, you are in a school classroom. And you have to learn all the teachings that this school class has to give you. When you have made them your own, and therefore you have stabilized your ethics, then we will incarnate either in the new realm or in other civilizations of other worlds. If not, there is no escape. So, our world of the incarnated and the world of the disincarnated is a three-dimensional world, that is to say, the world of humanity. So there is this cycle of in and out again and again, where we experience in life, we accumulate knowledge and consciousness to evolve. The process of the accumulation of evolutionary knowledge, which is experienced knowledge, automatically generates a structural mutation. That is, in fact, man is a seed that must grow. Yes, but let us ask a question, Carlo. Come on. This, however, the microphone, because otherwise...
Thank you for your answer. But, from my point of view, it's not yet complete as an answer, because it's fine as far as the discourse of this dimension of the universe in which we are having this experience as a dimensional evolution is concerned. But my question was also a complementary one concerning multi-universe. That is, in another type of universe, in another...
But I've already answered you. There is no other type universe.
There isn't? There is...
There is no other type of universe where you exist. You exist here. Full stop. In the multiverse, there are other humanity, other entities. Sure.
So, but the system, more or less, is the same?
It's 7 dimensions.
Ah, okay. You answered me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Obviously, Carlo, each dimension, from beginning to end, has a gigantic variation. So, if we want to get into details, a dimension is made up of many dimensional layers, such that the one that is at the beginning of the dimension is very different from one that is already far ahead, like in a school year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
The microphone, yes.
Yes, I saw your last interview with Giorgio Bongiovanni.
Yes.
And, if I understood correctly, Our Lady granted Giorgio Bongiovanni that the global Earth situation will not precipitate as long as he is alive. And he has set this date in 2033. So, presumably, in 2033.
As an opinion, eh?
His opinion, sure.
His opinion.
He expressed that opinion, though.
Yes.
So, in 2033, he should leave his physical body and the situation.
No, according to him, in 2033, Christ returns.
Christ comes back. So, exactly. So he comes to an end. This situation goes on until 2033, and then he will have the fulfillment.
What's your name?
Enzo Cosu.
Enzo. So, I'll specify better. Our Lady, by virtue perhaps of people who are working for this cause, has obtained another extension of time from God, and therefore she will make sure for some time yet that the atomic war does not break out. Because there are people who are understanding and starting to commit themselves, not just good-natured talk, to commit themselves, to put their hands in. So she, until the very last, until she sees that there is a chance to save a few more souls, she insists. And therefore, she reiterates what she has already done with the war. With the Cuba crisis in '63, the one she then did when she gave Bongiovanni the stigmata. And now she is repeating it again because she sees that some of her operatives are getting an awakening through their efforts. And therefore, she, in order to save a few more, gives more time, and God grants it. This is happening. Then, Bongiovanni, who is the spirit of Elijah, is part of the prophecy of the two witnesses. When the two witnesses are killed, God unleashes his wrath and will make the change. So if you go and read the chapter of the two witnesses in the Apocalypse of John, you will see that as the two witnesses are killed, immediately God unleashes his wrath. That is, the two witnesses are two prophets. They are Enoch and Elijah, who are back on earth, but there are also various apostles of Jesus who have been reincarnated because they have to set the table for the manifestation with righteousness and glory of the Lord Jesus Christ. This is the reality. All the rest, the rubbish that the media tells us, Professor, is all hogwash. The divine world is a world of power that can do anything. But the divine world is not interested in saving the slothful, the irresponsible, the selfish, the bad. The divine world wants to do in this planet what it has already done in billions of worlds scattered across the universe with peaceful societies that love each other. The project is also for our planet, but you need the grain. If not, you have no fruit, and therefore, we are in the process of sorting and separating the wheat from the chaff. The chaff, the Gospel says, will be burnt. The wheat will establish the new kingdom, that is, the elect. So, it is a contest with prizes. God is only judge of our choices. He does not impose, he leaves us free. Therefore, salvation is an opportunity for all. It has been explained what to do, and then it is up to us to decide. I, of all that I have told you today and so much other stuff, knew nothing, believed nothing, did not give a damn about anything. Then I touched it with my own hands, experienced it, and decided to commit myself to this cause. The extraterrestrials to whom I asked for collaboration charged me with informing and explaining something that is complicated due to the societal mindset, which is to unite science, spirituality, and the divine, which are separate. The fact that Bongiovanni is both a stigmatist and a contactee is a living syncretism that is part of the apocalyptic revelation of the last time. Then, free will. Everyone thinks what he wants. Caria is mad, I don't care. Caria is a buffoon. But think what you will. Huh? What's your name? What? Manuel, you see, I may agree with your version, but you have no proof. I've never seen you. I've been with Bongiovanni since 1988. I knew him before he had the stigmata. So I don't know where you met him. Maybe in a tram or at the bar. Huh? Whatever, he expressed his opinion. Free will. Everyone then reaps according to what he sows. Then again, everyone gets the alien they deserve, and the stigmatist they deserve. All right, I don't want controversy. Think what you like. I, Bongiovanni, know him like the back of my hand. His stigmata are true. His mission is true. Then, like all human beings, he may have weaknesses, sins. He has never said he is a saint, but, in the meantime, he works his ass off. He's anti-mafia. He bleeds. And I would like to ask you, who pontificate from the height of your altar? what you do for the cause of humanity. So perhaps sometimes it is better to give a certain impression than to open your mouth and confirm it. Please, questions. Questions.
Buonasera, salve, signor Caria. Grazie.
Good evening. Hello, Mr. Caria. Thank you for giving us Sardinians your time for this lecture. I wanted to ask you, I have a thought and also two questions, but maybe I'll ask one that will also be a bit on the agenda lately in recent years about the fact that the Earth is flat. It may be funny, but I ask it with all my heart.
No, the Earth, look.
No, but wait. Can I finish before about the Earth being flat, and also, by the way, Admiral Byrd's little story? What do you think of that? Not how you deny it, but what do you think about it? And then, I wanted to make a reflection, and then I'll close. So I have nothing more to say. I wonder, now that the US has also, anyway, said in a nutshell, they're vividly trying to bring up the fact of extraterrestrials, which do exist, by the way. I think it's very important. But isn't it that they're also trying to distract us from something more serious? By making us believe in these gray beings that, for me, could be avatars created by humans. That is, these gray beings as well.
I'll explain.
Esseri grigi che per me potrebbero essere degli avatar creati dagli umani, cioè anche.
I'll explain. You said your name is...
My name is Ignazio, and I was also very interested in the fact that if the Earth were flat, you would have to reevaluate a little...
Look, beyond...
Excuse me if that sounds like a provocation. I think very highly of you.
No, but for goodness sake, look, I always respond if it doesn't descend into insults and rudeness. So, the Earth is not flat for one simple reason. Because it is round and spherical. It is no coincidence that it is called the geosphere. There is a lot of scientific evidence. The problem, Ignazio, is that we, from our little world of Castedu or Sabida, are unable to understand and therefore anything that is not personally experienced, said by someone who boasts of being an expert, even of revealing hidden truths such as the flat earthers, may be acceptable. But I have been to the equator. In the equator, there is a line that is this wide. You stand on the equator line and you weigh a kilo less. And on the equator line, I have been to Ecuador several times, on the equator line, there is, in this Friends Museum, which is an ethnic museum, which just did it on the equator line. If you put a pole with a wooden heel and put a nail on it, you can get an egg to stand up straight on the tip of the nail, because it is held by the forces of the two hemispheres. This gentleman had a metal basin on a metal stand. He moved the basin, the sink in fact. He moved it 2 meters on this side of the equator line, and the water whirlpool turns one way. You move it 2 meters to the other side, it turns the other way. I have the videos I made, now, in the case.
Anyway, do you have doubts about the moon landing? And the fact that Kubrick, before he died...
That's the 5th question. Let me answer the others. Stop, Ignazio, please.
I don't make... Thank you for the consideration.
So, the Earth is not flat. Look, we were in the Russian NASA several times, and we found out that the MIR astronauts sometimes took personal video cameras on board and took small shots for the family from the portholes. So I have the original homemade videos of the astronauts from Earth. Not only that, at the equator, in that line, this gentleman had placed 2 windmills, and that line splits the planet in 2. In fact, to the left, the windmill spun in one direction. To the right, it spun in another. These phenomena are not possible on a flat Earth. There is the movement of the sun. They say that the sun goes back. But a lot of nonsense. Atmospheric circulation? That is nonsense. Why, Ignazio? Power has about 10 points by which it manipulates our minds. One is the strategy of distraction. continually creating fake news, conspiracy news. They create them. Sensationalistic, which attract the foolishness of people who dedicate themselves to them and who seek a flat earth instead of worrying about nuclear issues. Not only is the earth not flat, it is spherical, but it is hollow, and inside the earth, there is a double-sided planet. That's where Admiral Byrd came in. In fact, the Americans, with Operation High Jump, after the Second World War, tried to invade it. They sent aircraft carriers, submarines, planes. They tried to invade it. 5,000 soldiers. They wanted to invade it because it was a territory to be exploited. The invasion was supposed to last 6 months. After a few weeks, they returned home because much more evolved beings live there, and there are also extraterrestrial bases. In fact, a question that ufologists have often failed to understand is why flying saucers often go either north or south, because there are the two main dynamic entrances in the hollow Earth. All planets are hollow. In fact, a friend of mine who is a chemistry professor was at the Gran Sasso laboratories, and the technician working on the neutrino detector, which are particles that pass through matter, told him, "We are amazed because neutrinos come from above. They come from the sun." He said, "One day we found one that came from underground, because at the center of the Earth, the inner continents are powered by a small sun." The discovery dates back to 1936, but they hid it and the Nazis got into it, because Hitler was a great esotericist, and the Soviets, being communists and atheists, did not believe the Tibetan legends. However, they sent spies into Tibet, and the Nazis made expeditions with the Ahnenerbe, which was the esoteric section of the SS that went around the world to discover the great esoteric mysteries that Hitler wanted to know. And the head of the Ahnenerbe was Himmler. All the history they tell us in school is a lot of nonsense, because the victors, history, they always write it. You see, Sardinia kicked the Romans' ass. They never managed to invade Barbagia, but they write that they conquered us. There is a lot of filthy and disgusting junk that has been put into our heads since childhood. It needs to be emptied and refilled. Any other question?
Salve, buonasera.
Hello, good evening. No, I was booked.
No, I'm saying, after you there's...
Ah, yes, okay. The first question is this. So, you said earlier that these beings don't intervene so as not to interfere with free will.
They do not intervene massively and publicly. They are allowed a line of intervention on the razor's edge to avoid the worst. So when we speak of prohibited extraterrestrial intervention, it is manifesting themselves to the whole world. That is, imposing their presence with technological superiority because they are invincible.
But then they would intervene to punish us severely. Is that what I heard?
No.
Something like that you said.
When that extraterrestrial says, "punish severely," he is addressing the powerful.
Ah, okay, all right.
Not the people.
The other question is this. You spoke about the fact that for some years, in fact for several years, people have been subjugated through fear.
Yes.
I have also been following you for years. However, the videos I saw today are terrifying. Don't you think that also increases the sense of fear and feeds an egregore?
What's your name?
Donastella.
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 If I go to the doctor and he diagnoses me and tells me I have a tumor, is he doing terrorism or is he trying to save my life?
It depends, because iatrogenic exists.
Huh?
It depends.
Depends on what?
It depends, because it also exists. There are doctors who make wrong diagnoses and people then... I don't want to get into a controversy like that.
Let's stay on the... Otherwise, you always turn the tables on me.
No. Okay, what I'm asking.
I don't intimidate. I provide information. I'm saying we're all in danger of dying here.
Okay.
Shall we get off our asses?
Which one is...
So, I'm glad you're terrified.
So what's the alternative? I mean, what can we do? We who are not...
Start. I've already said it. Start. Start informing yourself. Read the messages. Do something. In other words, you begin the journey.
Already done.
I started the journey, going to Sicily, to Eugenio Siragusa, and starting to study. Because I was nobody, I was someone like you, maybe worse. Then one thing leads to another, and one does not imagine where commitment can take him. So the question, what can I do, is wrong. But I have to find something to do to defend my life. Because this story, Donna Stella, also concerns you, your children, your family, your relatives. It's not that it concerns others. So, I am happy to have terrified you, because the day nuclear missiles explode in Cagliari, you will say, but how? What is happening? I have not intimidated you. I have shown you the reality of what is happening. Then, if one says, you do terror, I prefer to be an ostrich and keep my head in the sand. By all means. That is not my audience. I am looking for a conscious audience that, like myself, is trying to do something. First of all, for oneself. I care about me, I don't know about you. I mean, I care that extraterrestrials maybe take me for a flying saucer ride and take me out of this madness that is, for me, inexplicable. On the contrary, for me it's terrifying the apathy of people, the inability to have a spirit of goodness, of sensitivity to say, what the hell kind of crappy life am I living? Why don't I get involved in something too? Even if it's just accompanying the old lady across the pedestrian crossing. We must break out of the ghetto of fear of good, because we passively accept evil every single day in its most horrible forms. This is the problem of society and of this race that seems cursed, that cannot get up from the chair and have a collective conscience for the good of all. The good of the individual will be burnt by the evil of those who dominate us. You keep building the villa here, the yacht there, the bank account. Everything will be burnt. Atlantis was a civilization that lived 75,000 years and had reached a scientific and technological evolution far ahead of ours. They are gone. The race of giants in Sardinia is no more. Oblivion, forgotten. When God moves, it is frightening, because He is the Almighty, and the race of giants, it is a race too, the Sardinian giants, who had betrayed the Father, violating His laws. God has swept them away, and today we cannot even bring up their memory, except poor Muscus, who is between 4 stones. This is the reality. Our history is a history of catastrophes, of civilizations that are born, arise, corrupt themselves and disappear. The history of mankind is very ancient. I saw in Peru the remains of a civilization 65 million years ago. Gone. But why don't we get out of this evil? We can't. We are fearful, cowardly, and uncaring, and we will come to the end we deserve if we don't change. But because God and the Holy Mother are so merciful and compassionate, there is still hope. Then everyone does as they please. I do not tell Aesop's fables. I tell the story of this time and of this humanity, and of very uncomfortable things that the majority of people do not have the courage to say. Give me the time, guys. Last question. There was...
Is it on? In the meantime, thank you for the wealth of information you've offered us. And I must confess, I don't know how I'm going to be able to go to dinner and eat my sea bass cooked with Vernaccia wine. After this...
I'll give you a hand. I'll go with you.
After such a terrifying overview. Joking aside, I wanted to ask you 2 questions. The first you've already answered, because my question would have been, what can I do in my humble...
What's your name?
Francesco.
Look, Francesco, I'll answer you straight away. create a network of sensitive people who begin a path of growth, very humbly. They meet, they have meetings a bit like Alcoholics Anonymous. They have a meeting, I don't know, one a month, one a week.
I'm a teetotaler, eh?
So Seabass with Vernaccia?
It's an exception, a small exception.
Then I repeat, Ignazio, I started like this. I went to Siragusa. This gentleman literally fascinated me. However, I don't believe in anything. I got my ass up from the chair. I redirected my finances from travel, amusements, entertainment. I redirected my finances into books, travel to learn and verify. Because I didn't trust Siragusa, despite the great emotional inspiration. I told myself, but I have to verify, because if this story is true, I have to change my life. But my life. For me, a railway man, at 28, I had made it. I had solved the problem of survival until death separated me. So, questioning everything was a big deal. However, if this information Siragusa gives me is true, I have to get my ass out of my chair, something, and that's how I started. So networking. Networking and then clustering. Making a group. So, in fact, it is a political act, that is, taking care of the polis. It is a political act where we take care of the good of the polis, that is us, to change a catastrophic situation that can destroy us. Now, it is obvious that we, in the face of the Pentagon, NATO, will not succeed. What is our victory? That there is a much more powerful, much more evolved army working with us.
Here, in this regard, I wanted to ask you a second question. Are there any tools or ways in which you can contact or ask these beings of light to contact you if you are deeply convinced, as I am, that everything you've described is real?
The thing is possible, but there's a big problem. The problem is that once they contact you, if you don't change your life, it's a big karmic problem. So, they do not contact you to get you into trouble. They contact you only after thorough surveys where they assess that the person can cope. If not, they do not contact you. Contacting extraterrestrials is a pleasure, but it is dangerous, because afterwards, you can never go back.
It's a responsibility.
Gigantic. And if the program they entrust you with, you fail it, it's worse than the others, because you've seen, you've touched, and you haven't done it. So, you get there. I today can say, I was predestined, because if not, I saw these beings when I was a child. They're spaceships. They came over me, sideways. They stopped in front of me. So, today, very humbly, there was a design. If not, it didn't happen, and it's not a very common thing. I've seen spaceships, I don't even count them anymore. I've seen them everywhere, in Italy, in Sardinia, in South America, in Europe, in the United States. I've seen them in Mexico City. I've seen them, they're here. They are here. But contact, which most people seek for sensationalism and egocentricity, because they want to feel important, is dangerous, very dangerous. A former friend of mine founded a group called Massive Contact. This is madness. Massive Contact is a gigantic responsibility. And they don't contact the masses until that moment arrives. They contact people who, once contacted, take huge risks. Some strange incidents have happened to me where I think there is a hand of a certain type of people. However, I know that I am protected and therefore I have not been touched. So it's a very delicate thing. It's not something so, you know the UFO?
It's not a game.
No, it's absolutely the most serious thing on planet Earth today. It is, as Deuteronomy says, the choice between life and death. And it wasn't easy for me to get to today. In the beginning, it was very hard.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, the last Real quick.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. You would be the sun. Thank you. What I can say to you, friends, and we say goodbye with this. Let's learn to love each other and think that a different future is possible. And to think that these institutions of death will disappear once and for all from the face of the earth. It is possible. It will happen. The question is whether we will be part of this future. In the end, however, God, His harvest, will do it. It is up to us whether we are there or not. I thank you. Write to me. Write to me. I have an email, scrivi@piergiorgiocaria.it. Write the questions, and I'll answer them.
Scrivetemi le domande e vi risponderò.